Hello everyone. In today's video, we will see what are biodiversity hotspots. Biodiversity hotspots are biogeographic regions that have the richest and the most threatened reservoirs of plant and animal life on Earth. These regions have been identified as some of the world's most important ecosystems that are home to a high number of endemic species that also provide crucial ecosystem services for the benefit of humans. A biodiversity hotspot is a biogeographic region that is both a significant reservoir of biodiversity and is threatened with destruction. The term biodiversity hotspot specifically refers to a biologically rich areas around the world that have lost at least 70% of their original habitat. These are the large regions containing exceptional concentrations of plant endemism and experiencing high rates of habitat loss. Biodiversity hotspots are a method to identify those regions of the world where attention is needed to address biodiversity loss and to guide investments in conservation. The total combined area of the world's 36 hotspots once occupied over 15.7%, that is about 23.7 million square kilometer of the Earth's land area. However, due to the extreme habitat loss in these regions as a result of the anthropogenic activities, the combined area of all the global hotspots currently covers only 2.4% of the Earth's land area and accounts for about 30% 5% of the world's ecosystem services. These regions support more than 1,52,000 of the global vascular plant species. That means about 50% of the vascular plant species and 42% of all vertebrate species like amphibians, reptiles, birds, and mammals as endemics. It has been estimated that about 3,608 amphibians, 3,723 reptiles, 3,551 birds, and 1,845 mammals are found as endemics in these hotspot regions. As per the red list of threatened species that have been prepared by the International Union for the Conservation of Nature and Natural Resources, more than 79% of the threatened amphibians, 63% of the threatened birds, and 60% of the threatened mammals can be found exclusively within these hotspots. The current population data also shows that about 2.08 billion people reside in the hotspot regions and are dependent on these forest areas for their survival. Now let us see the origin of this concept. The idea was first developed by Norman Myers in 1988 to identify tropical forest hotspots characterized both by exceptional levels of plant endemism and serious habitat loss, which he then expanded to a more global scope. The concept of biodiversity hotspot was first proposed by the British ecologist Norman Myers, which was published in 1988. In this article, he identified 10 tropical forest hotspots as conservation priorities, which were characterized by an extraordinarily large number of endemic plant species found in relatively smaller areas, besides facing serious threats of habitat loss. In 1990, the article was revised and thoroughly analyzed by Myers and other researchers, culminating in hotspots Earth's biologically richest and most endangered terrestrial ecoregions. Conservation International adopted Myers hotspots as its institutional blueprint in 1989, and in 1999 the organization undertook an extensive global review which introduced quantitative thresholds for the designation of biodiversity hotspots. A reworking of the hotspots analysis in 2004 resulted in the system in place today. Currently, 35 biodiversity hotspots have been identified, most of which occur in tropical forests. They represent just 2.3% of Earth's land surface, but between them, they contain around 50% of the world's endemic plant species and 42% of all terrestrial vertebrates. Overall, hotspots have lost around 86% of their original habitat, and additionally, they are considered to be significantly threatened by extinctions induced by climate change. Now, why are biodiversity hotspots are important? There are places on earth that are both biologically rich and deeply threatened. For our own sake, we must work to protect them. Species are the building blocks of Earth's life support systems. We all depend on them. But our planet's biodiversity, the vast array of life on Earth, faces a crisis of historic proportions. Development, urbanization, pollution, disease, they are all wreaking havoc on the tree of life. Today, species are going to extinct at the fastest rate since the mass extinction of the dinosaurs. To stem this crisis, we must protect the places where biodiversity lives. But species are not evenly distributed around the planet. Certain areas have large numbers of endemic species. Those, those are found nowhere else. Many of these are heavily threatened by habitat loss and other human activities. These areas are the biodiversity hotspots. 36 regions where success in conserving species can have an enormous impact in securing our global biodiversity. So, what are the criteria to determine an area as a hotspot? According to Conservation International, to be recognized as a biodiversity hotspot, a region must meet two strict criteria. They are the number of endemic species. In this, the region must comprise over at least 0.5% or 1,500 endemic vascular plant species. It has been found that these vascular plants are critical for the ecosystem's sustainability since they allow the circulation of photosynthetic products, water, and minerals. The second criteria is the degree of threat. In, in this, the criteria must have lost at least 70% or more of its original habitat. Today, our mission has expanded beyond the protection of hotspots. We recognize that it is not enough to protect species and places. For humanity to survive and thrive, the protection of nature must be a fundamental part of every human society. Yet, the hotspots remain important in our work for two important reasons. Biodiversity underpins all life on Earth. Without species, there would be no air to breathe, no food to eat, no water to drink. There would be no human society at all. And as the places on earth where the most biodiversity is under the most threat, hotspots are critical to human survival. Thank you.